Hello, dear students, and good evening to all of you. Let us start today with a new chapter of history, that is colonial education and its impact. Okay, today I am providing you the first part of this chapter. So, students, this chapter is going to be very interesting as it will tell you about the history of the education system that we are following today. Okay, so in the earlier chapter, you have learned about, okay, that how British rule affected Rajas and Nawabs, how it affected the peasants and the tribals, as well as the workers and the industries. But now in this chapter, we are going to learn about and we will try to understand that what implications it had for the lives of student as well as on the Indian education. Okay. So as the British in India not only wanted the territorial conquest and control over revenues, as we have learned in the previous chapters that the English East India Company was successfully conquest all the territories of India, as well as they had also established their control over the revenue of India. Okay. Now after some time they also felt that they had a cultural mission, that means they have to civilize the Indians, that is the natives means the people of India. Okay, so they wanted to civilize the natives because according to their beliefs Indians were not civilized. Okay, now who are the natives? So basically the natives are the people of India only, and they also wanted to change the customs and values of India. Okay, so let us start this chapter. But before starting this chapter, it is very important to know that how was the education system during the pre-colonial era. Okay, how was the education imparted during the pre-colonial era? After that only we will be able to understand that what was the condition of education after or during the colonial era. Okay, so here I am providing you that education during the pre-colonial India. Okay, how was the education system of India before the arrival of the Britishers? So here there is one report from William Adams. Okay, he presented a report in front of the British officers, and in that he basically written that how he interpreted the education of India. So according to him, the education was normally imparted by religious functionaries. As we were learning, when we were learning about ancient history, in that we have seen that only Hindus were there at that time, Aryans were there, and basically the students has to go to the guru's home. There was a system of Gurukul. Okay, so student has to go to the guru's house for the purpose of education. Okay, now here also basically the education was normally imparted by religious functionaries, like religious preachers only teach the students, like for Hindus the Hindu religion or religious preachers, and for the Muslims the related Maulvis and all that for the Muslims. Now the Hindus, the type of school that were there, basically for the elementary education of Hindus pathshalas were there, and for the higher education talls were there. Okay, like that only for the Muslims, for the elementary education maktabs were there, and for the purpose of higher education madrasas were there. Okay, so like this only the education system was there. It was basically divided on the basis of religion, since there was not that kind of unity between the Hindus and Muslims. Okay, so that is why this, since the education was based on religion, that is why the medium or the places where the education was imparted, that is also separate. There were no fixed school building like we are having today. Fixed school building, there is a place named as a school where we go to attain or gain knowledge. So at that time there was no fixed building of schools. Basically teaching happened under the banyan tree or any tree, okay, in temples or in guru's house. Basically the education was imparted at teacher's house or under the tree. Maybe you have seen pictures that how education was imparted at that time. Okay, now education was restricted to only young men of the higher caste, as all of us are knowing that India followed a very rigid caste system that was earlier divided on the basis of occupation, but later on it started basing on the birth. Okay, in which whatever family you will took birth, you will become, or your religion or your caste become that only. Okay, so basically only higher caste people were allowed to gain education, and that is also only men were allowed to gain education. Girls were usually not allowed access to any educations. Girls were not allowed education during that time. Now, the subjects that were taught in those schools, whatever schools were there, what were the subjects that were taught? Like today we are having English, geography, history, science, maths. What were the subjects at that time? So at that time the subjects were law, religion, astronomy, okay, logic, literature, like Sanskrit was the language, so Sanskrit literature. Learning was based on traditional text. That means whatever epics we were having, like for Hindus, Ramayana, Mahabharata, okay, Vedas were there, okay, Bhagavad Gita was there. So basically the education was imparted with those traditional texts, and for Muslims there were Quran and other Muslim texts. So on the basis of that only education was imparted to the students. Instruction began with writing alphabets on sand and slate. Like today also the child starts writing, okay, so with alphabet only. So firstly whatever language of medium was there, Arabic, Persian or Sanskrit. So firstly student learn to write the alphabet of that particular language. Then people proceed towards consonant, vowel signs, counting numbers, fraction, measures and so on. And later on the topic started expanding, okay. So there was no fixed fees, there was no fixed fee, okay. The person, those who were rich, they used to give more money, and the person, those who were poor, they have to give less money, okay. No printed textbooks were there, there were no printed textbooks at the time. No separate school building, no type of nothing school building type was there. No benches or chairs, like today we are having a proper set of classroom that is having bench and desk for you to sit, okay. So at that time there was no such provisions. No blackboard was there, no system of separate classes. Like today we are having graded system of education. Classes are divided from nursery to 12th. At that time there was no such kind of provisions, okay. No roll call, like today you are having your roll numbers, your names on the registers, your attendance are marked, but earlier it was not like that. No annual functions, or sorry, no annual examinations and no regular timetable, okay. So all these things were not followed during that era. During the pre-colonial era, education was basically imparted according to the conveniency of the people. The education system was flexible. It was said that, ऐसा कहा जाता है, that at that time during the harvest season, when there is the time of cutting of the crops, at that time children do not come to the school because they were busy in the fields, okay. So and again when the harvest season ends, again students come to the school or come to the guru's house, or education started. So it was flexible according to their conveniency. They go to school, they go to the guru's house or place, or they gain education. Or the education was, suppose that I want to gain education on law, so I will go for law, okay. It was not like that timetable was divided, period was there, nothing like that, okay. Now how Britishers saw education, what was the perspective of Britishers regarding our education. So if we will talk about this, so when Britishers or English East India Company came to India, for the first 60 years they do not took any interest in the Indian education. Firstly, they were not interested on education of India, they were only busy in for the territorial expansion, okay. Now later on they also felt they had a cultural mission. Now later on when they were able to conquer a large part of India, then they felt the need that yes, they need some of the literate Indians for the purpose of running the administration. They need Indians, since India was a very large nation. So for that purpose they need some of the literate Indians for running the nation, as well as they wanted some civilized Indians, because according to Britishers, Indians were not civilized, okay. So basically after some time when they expand themselves territorially, then they felt the need of a cultural mission, okay. Then they understood that they had to civilize the natives, they had to civilize the Indians, as well as they have to change their customs and values, okay. Because as in your book there is a famous statement of Lord Thomas Macaulay is given in your book only, okay. So just listen it carefully. We must do our best to form a class who may be interpreters between us and the millions whom we govern. So Britishers wanted to create a class of people, okay, those who were literate and those who can relate or maintain relation between the millions of people. That means whenever the Britishers want to send any messages or want to send any command, then those literate Indians will send it to the millions of people, those who are living in India. Okay. Now, a class of persons, Indian in blood and color, they wanted to prepare a class of person, those who are Indian with their blood and with their facial color or racial color. Okay. But English in taste, in opinion, in morals and in intellect. Basically, they wanted to create Englishmen. They wanted to change Indians' thought, their moral values, their taste, their opinion. Okay. So, for that purpose only, Britishers wanted to educate us just because they wanted some literate servants. Now, the question arose that what changes were to be introduced. Now, the question arose in front of the Britishers that what kind of changes they are going to introduce, as well as how were Indians to be educated, that is civilized. What they should do to civilize the Indians, as well as what are the subjects, okay, that they are going to teach. Made into what, like they have to develop the interest in the Indians to know that what are the good subjects that to be taught to them. Okay. Now let us see the next one, the tradition of Orientalist. Now students, when Britishers came to India, at that time only or in the initial phase of English East India Company, there were some people or some British officers, those who were interested in the languages of India. Okay. At that time in India there was Arabic, Persian, Sanskrit. So basically there was a class of British officers, those who were interested in the language of India, as well as those who were keen interested to know the customs and the values and the morals of India. They were interested in learning the Indian traditional text, okay, and they were willing to learn the text that was based on philosophy, okay, laws and all those. So who were the Orientalists? That is the first question that arises to our mind. So the Orientalists were the group of people, those who were interested in Asian languages. That means Orientalists were the group of people, those who were interested in the language of India and had deep respect for the Indian culture, text as well as the language of India. So can you believe that? The Britishers also had a group of people, those who were interested in India's language, Indian text and Indian culture. Okay, so those were the Orientalists. Now the tradition, there was a phase of the people, those who believed all this, and let us learn. So initially some of the British officers were prompted by a desire to know the customs and habits of Indian people, because when they came to India, Indians were the new people and everyone has a curiosity to know about the Indians, their lifestyle, what are their habits, what are their customs. So some of the Britishers were interested in this. Okay, and among these, William Jones was there, the then Governor General Warren Hastings was there, H.T. Colebrook, that is Henry Thomas Colebrook was there, and Nathaniel Halhed were the famous Orientalists. Here, I have mentioned some of the famous Orientalists, that is William Jones, Warren Hastings, Henry Thomas Colebrook and Nathaniel Halhed. These were the persons, those who were interested in the text of India, in the languages of India, as well as the tradition of India, the customs of India. Okay. Now let us learn about William Jones. This is the most famous Orientalist. And who was William Jones? So basically William Jones came to India in 1783 in Calcutta. Okay. He came to Calcutta because he was appointed as the junior judge of the Supreme Court that was in Calcutta. Okay. So William Jones was basically a junior judge. So basically William Jones came to Calcutta in 1783. He was junior judge of Supreme Court that was established by the Britishers in Calcutta. Okay. Now why he was known as Orientalist? William Jones was a linguist. Okay, he was a linguist. Now the meaning of linguist, a person who know or who is interested to learn various languages. Okay, who is interested to learn various languages, that is a linguist. Okay, and he took interest in the study of Oriental languages. Now what is the meaning of Oriental? The Asian languages. Since William Jones came to India, and when he came here, he was interested to learn new languages, because at that time Persian was there, Arabic was there and Sanskrit was there. And since he was a linguist, so he was already know the languages like French, Greek, English, Latin. Okay, he learned Arabic with his one of his friend, and he also learned Persian. As you can see, here is one picture. In this picture, he is learning Persian language only. Okay, this is a famous painting in which William Jones is learning English only. And later on, when he came to Calcutta, he studied Sanskrit language also, as well as he focused on grammar also. He learned poetry of Indian text also. He learned the text on laws, philosophy and religion, etc. That means he was very interested and he had a deep respect for the Indian traditional text. Okay, now let us move further. This picture belongs to Henry Thomas Colebrook. He was the person who wrote on the Vedas and compiled a book on Sanskrit grammar. Okay, he basically compiled a book on Sanskrit grammar, and he also wrote on the Vedas of India. Okay, the next picture is of Nathaniel Halhed. Okay, Nathaniel Halhed basically translated the Manusmriti. Okay, Manusmriti was the code of Hindu law, and he translated Manusmriti into English, and he also prepared a manual, a writing on Bengali grammar in English. So basically what these Orientalists were doing, these Orientalists were reading the Indian text and they were translating it into English so that others can also read it. Okay, now let us see. Here you can see with the effort of all of them, with the effort of H.T. Colebrook, with the effort of Nathaniel Halhed, and with the help of both of these, William Jones established an Asiatic Society in Bengal. He established Asiatic Society in Bengal in the year 1784. Now this Asiatic Society was based for the purpose of the research in the Indian text. Okay, so that they can research, or with the help of, or here they can research on Indian subjects. And basically it also started a journal. Now you will ask, what is journal? Journal is basically a magazine, a diary. Okay, so they started a journal named Asiatic Researches. As you can see, here is the picture of Asiatic Researches that was started by William Jones in India. Okay, so this is like that only. With the effort of these Orientalists, an Asiatic Society was set up in Bengal in 1784. Now let us move further, and here I want to tell you that what was the view of the Orientalist. Okay, what Orientalists actually think. In order to understand India, in their belief, they believe that if we wanted to rule on India, and it is very important to understand India, and for understanding India, it was necessary to discover the sacred and legal text. That means we have to go through the Indian text that were written in the past, that were produced in the ancient period. For only those texts could reveal the real ideas and laws of the Hindus and Muslims. Because according to these Orientalists, those ancient texts were having the ideas and the reality of the Hindus and Muslims. Actually, their thoughts were there. Okay, and only a new study of these texts could form the basis of future development in India. And according to Orientalists, it is very important for the Britishers to read out those texts. After that only they will be able to develop India. Okay, now what they did, for all this, so they went about discovering ancient texts. They go through all the ancient texts, they understand their meanings. Okay, they translate them into their languages and making their findings known to others. They translate it and they encourage others also to read the ancient text of India. Now later on, what was the exact purpose of the Orientalists? So the Orientalists believe that if they will do all this, if they will translate Indian traditional text, if they will encourage Indians to read out their text, so it would not only help the British learn from Indian culture. So according to Orientalists, they said that if we will go through the Indian text, we will also learn new things with those, but it would also help Indians rediscover their own heritage and understand the lost glories of their past. So they encourage that if we will provide the traditional education, or the education of traditional texts to Indians, then Indians will also started respecting their heritage. Okay, the British would become the guardian of Indian culture as well as its master. So basically, the Orientalists wanted to please the Indians. Like, if we will teach Indians their education only or their traditional text only, so it will be easier for us to rule on India, according to the Orientalist. Okay. Now, after some time, let us see what were the other works done by Orientalists. So, in this procession only, the Orientalists set up a madrasa, that is a Muslim school, a madrasa in 1781 in Calcutta. Why they established a madrasa? Because they wanted to promote the study of Arabic, Persian and Islamic law. Okay? The next is, they also set up a Hindu college in Banaras in 1791 to encourage the study of ancient Sanskrit texts. That Hindu college is only now the Banaras Hindu University. Okay? Next, in 1792, the Delhi Anglo-Oriental College was also set up in Delhi. Now, what those Orientalists started establishing colleges, the colleges that promote Indian languages, okay, so that Indians can be literate. Now, next is Charter Act of 1813. Now, what was the Charter Act of 1813? When we were learning about the industries in history, at that time only we have learned about the Charter Act of 1813. When we were learning the history industry chapter, there we have learned that the Charter Act of 1813 banned the monopoly, okay, the monopoly of English East India Company to trade with the East. At that time only, the Charter Act of 1813 also provided one provision for the education in India also. And according to the Charter Act of 1813, it directed English East India Company to set aside a sum of 1 lakh rupee. Okay, it directed that according to the Charter Act, the English East India Company has to set up at least 1 lakh rupee from the Indian revenue. Whatever tax they are collecting from India, from that only they have to keep at least 1 lakh rupee for the improvement and development of Indian education. Okay, as well as for the introduction and promotion of the knowledge of sciences also. So this was the Charter Act of 1813. But since after the phase of Orientalists, still Britishers do not know that in which field they have to invest this 1 lakh rupee. That is why till 1823 this 1 lakh rupee was remained untouched, because Britishers were not able to decide that where they are going to invest this money. Because Orientalist, according to Orientalist, it was like the Indians had to be taught in their languages only, Indian had to be taught their traditional text only. But in contradiction to them, there is one more group arises, and that group was the tradition of Anglicist, and that group was the Anglicist. Now a new phase started in India, and this phase was the period of the Anglicists, the people, those who believe that English education should be imparted in India. Okay, so the question arises, who were Anglicists? So basically, Anglicists were the person or the group of the people, those who promoted English language in India, as well as they favored that Indians should be taught Western scientific knowledge. Okay, so that group was the group of Anglicists. Now, there was a contradiction started between the Orientalist and the Anglicist, because the Orientalist wanted the Indian education in India, and the Anglicist wanted to promote the English education as well as the Western education, that means the British education system in India. Okay, so now who were the proponents of Anglicist group? Basically, James Mill. About him we have already learned in the first chapter of history. We have learned that James Mill only divided the Indian history, okay, into 3 periods, and that was not accepted by the Indians. He only said that the period before the arrival of British era was the dark period, and we Britishers only developed India. And the next was Lord Thomas Macaulay. So they were the famous proponent, that means they were the follower of the Anglicist belief, and they believed that Indians were essentially uncivilized. They believe that Indians are uncivilized means they do not have basic manners, they are uncivilized, they are illiterate we can say. So the Britishers had to civilize them. According to James Mill and Lord Thomas Macaulay, they believed that the Britishers had to civilize them and inculcate moral values in Indians. That means, according to these two, Indians were totally, they do not have any moral value, they are uncivilized, they are illiterate. So Britishers had to civilize them. Britishers had to educate them the moral ethics. The knowledge, according to them, the knowledge of the East, that means the knowledge of the India was full of errors. That means the knowledge of India is of no use and unscientific thought. And Indians have unscientific thought. Later on, they also said that Eastern literature, that means the Arabic, Persian or Sanskrit, was non-serious and light-hearted. According to them, all those Indian traditional texts were of no use. So they argued that it was wrong on the part of the British to spend so much effort in encouraging the study of Arabic and Sanskrit language and literature. So the Anglicists said that it was not good for the Britishers to invest on the education or on the study of Arabic, Persian or Sanskrit language or on the traditional text of India. It is waste of money as well as the waste of time. So the first picture is of James Mill and the second picture is of Thomas Macaulay. So let us understand them one by one. What were their beliefs? Okay. So first of all, James Mill declared that the British effort should not be to teach what the natives wanted. Since we were Indians, we wanted our language, we wanted our traditional text only to be learned. That is why James Mill said the Britishers should not teach the Indians what they wanted to learn, okay, or what they respected in order to please them. James Mill thought that Orientalists were the group of people, those who wanted to please, okay, to make Indians feel special, and with that only they wanted to win a place in the heart of Indians. Okay, so James Mill were against this. The aim of education ought to be to teach what was useful and practical. According to James Mill, he said that the education system of India should be useful as well as should be practical, and he also said that Indians should be made familiar with the science, technology, that was advancing in the West, rather than all this poetry and sacred literature, the religious literature of India. Somehow they were right also, okay, because it was very necessary for the Indians also to learn about science and technology, okay, because poetry and the traditional text are important, but the scientific study and the technological knowledge was also important, okay. Now, who was Lord Macaulay? This picture belongs to Lord Macaulay, and according to him, he saw India as an uncivilized country that needed to be civilized. Okay, he said that no branch of Eastern language, according to him, could be compared to what England had produced. He had very rigid thought. Okay, it was not like that. He was very cruel, or we can say that he was very unkind. He said that Eastern knowledge is of totally waste. No branch of Eastern knowledge can be compared with England. He also said that a single shelf of a good European library was worth the whole native literature of India and Arabia. According to him, a single shelf of book kept in an European library is better than whole Indian text. Okay. Next is, he emphasized the need to teach the English language, the most important factor or the provision that Macaulay wanted. He wanted to teach Indians English. Okay. He felt that the knowledge of English would allow Indians, according to him, he felt that if Indians will know English, okay, then only they will be able to read the text that was composed by different countries. Then only they will be able to know about the new ideas and traditions. So that is why on 2nd February 1835, the British historian and politician Thomas Babington Macaulay presented his Minute on Indian Education. Now what is Minute on Indian Education? Basically, in front of the British Parliament, he presented his speech, and his speech was only known as minute on Indian education. Okay, and in that only he explained himself that why there is a need to teach Indians English and which type of education should be taught to the Indians. So here, as you can see, this is the part of the speech of Macaulay. In that he has written, I have traveled across. Here he is using diplomatic mind. Okay, you can read it by yourself. Now, English Education Act. Following the minutes of Lord Macaulay, the English Education Act was passed in India in the year 1835 by the then Governor General William Bentinck. Okay, during 1835, William Bentinck was the Governor General of India, and he passed English Education Act after the declaration of the minutes of Macaulay. Okay, so that is why Lord Macaulay got the credit to introduced English and Western education in India. So according to this English Education Act of 1835, there were two provisions introduced. The first provision was to make English the medium of instruction. English Education Act said that now the medium of instruction, that means like we are having Hindi medium schools, English medium schools, okay, so like that only the medium of instruction should be English in the schools. The next is, he also said that, or according to the English Education Act, it was also passed that to stop the promotion of Oriental institutions. According to that, they had to stop the institutions that are promoting Oriental languages, that are promoting Sanskrit, Arabic, and Persian languages. So that is why the Calcutta Madrasa, the Banaras Hindu University or Sanskrit College, all was just stopped according to this English Education Act. So I hope, so this is all for this chapter today. This much we have learned, that we have also seen that what was the contradiction between the thoughts of the Orientalist and Anglicist. We have seen that finally which thought was accepted by the Britishers. Finally they accepted the thought of Anglicist only, and they stopped promoting the Oriental languages in India. Okay, now the Britishers wanted to educate Indians in English, and they wanted to educate Indians with the Western education only that was going on in the Britain or European countries. So after this we will also see some further topics in the next video. This is all for today. Please read the chapter and watch the video carefully. I'll explain the video, or I will explain the chapter in the Zoom classes. So thank you students for today.